The topic for this episode is basically the habits which human beings, believing human beings, should develop or should have if they want to raise good children, good believing children. First and foremost, we should know that the raising of good children begins even before the child is born. If we wait until after the child is born, and then we start to question ourselves how we're going to raise good kids or raise this child properly, then we've actually missed out on a key principle or key principles that we should have dealt with before we reach this point. First and foremost, we have to choose the right wife and the right husband. Because if we've chosen the wrong husband or we've chosen the wrong wife, then this is going to affect the raising of the children. A wife who is ignorant, she doesn't understand the religion, she's functioning according to customs or traditions, or similarly the husband, in both cases, this is going to harm severely the development of the child. So we have to start with the right choice, meaning that a man is looking for a wife. His first consideration should be her piety. As Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, had said, that women are married for 4 basic reasons. 1, for their beauty. 2, for their wealth. 3, for their family status of their family in society. And 4, for their piety. And he advised that we should marry the one which is pious, and we'll be successful. Similarly, for women, it's the same thing. We could say women marry men because they're handsome, they have money, they have status, or they have some religion, they're religious. And the same advice goes here. We should choose a religious spouse. From that basis, then we have something to work with. Furthermore, even before the child is born, we know that when a husband and wife come together, they should make dua when they have sexual relations. Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, had said that the supplication, "O Allah, protect us from Satan and protect our offspring from Satan that you have provided for us." That if one says that, then the child is going to be protected. So this is a starting point. This is to ensure that the child is protected, on one hand, coming up into a protected circumstance, and 2, they are themselves protected by this dua. So the first level, or first principle, or first habit, is that dua needs to be made. Parents should make dua for a good child. They should, as we said, make dua even before having the child. And in chapter 25, verse 74, Allah describes the worshippers of the Most Merciful as making the following dua. O our Lord, grant us from our spouses and children a coolness to our eyes. And Zachariah, he made the dua, so give me from yourself, to Allah, an heir who will inherit me and the offspring of Yaqub. That's Jacob. And such was the practice of the earlier generations of righteous people. They made dua for righteous children. Because ultimately, what a person ends up with in his or her family is by the decision of God. So one tries to stack the deck in their favor by turning to God, turning to Allah, asking His help that they get children who would increase the faith of the family rather than decrease it. The second principle, which should be observed, is that the children themselves have a right that their parents also be righteous. As the parents want righteous children, they have the right to have righteous parents. And as we said in the very beginning, that the choice that one makes in terms of a husband or a wife is going to determine ultimately where our children are going to be. And we also find in the Quran where Allah describes one of the cases with Moses and Khidr, where Khidr rebuilds a wall that had under it a treasure which was for some orphans in that town. Moses didn't understand why Khidr had done that. But Allah describes, as Khidr relates to Moses, that the parents of these orphans was righteous. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. So Allah described him as in that way, through Al-Khidr, which became a reason for protecting the orphans. So the righteousness of the parents has an impact on the children. So the children, in order to have the best opportunity for being raised or for developing as righteous, growing up as righteous children, it is important that they have themselves righteous parents. And of course, what it means to be a righteous parent is that one has a clear understanding of the religion. Not just that one is religious in the sense that you're described as one who prays. I mean, of course, that is important. You pray and you fast. But that one's concepts of God is correct. One knows who really Allah is. So that person may be described externally as being a religious person. But when we say religious person here, we're talking about following the correct religion, not just following any religion, right? So their understanding of the religion should be correct. And they should also be implementing and practicing the religion in their lives, not just giving lip service to it, so they have knowledge of it, but they're actually implementing it. With that thought, we're going to break here for a minute, and inshallah, we hope that you will be with us when we return. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu rasulillah. All praise due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last messenger of Allah. I'd like to welcome you back to our program on the 7 habits for raising good children. In the first part, we were looking at the first 2 habits, which were basically, 1, that the parents should make prayers for the children. They should make dua, they should ask Allah, because ultimately the choice of what kind of children they have is going to be determined by Allah. He is the one who provides offspring, or even if they're going to have offspring. So the principle of supplication, calling on God, should be there before they have children. They should be supplicating when they have relations, sexual relations. And the second principle, we said, was that the children have the right to have God-fearing parents, because that will have an impact on their own chances of being raised correctly. We said actually even before that, that before they get married, they should have chosen their spouses for the right reasons. Then we went on to look at what constitutes a good Muslim. Good Muslim parents, what constitutes it? Is it just merely praying sometimes, or most of the time? Or has it got to do with actual correct belief, knowledge really of who Allah is? Because that's the foundation of Islam. That knowledge should be there. The third habit is perhaps among the most difficult habits, and that is that the parents be the best example for their children. Because children, and it's the nature of children to imitate their parents or imitate their teachers. For parents, this is the starting point in the home. So if the parents are bad examples, then the children are going to turn out to be bad kids. They're not going to be good children. So we can't expect children to grow up with good moral character, good behavior, etc., if we haven't set the best example for them. So, for example, all parents basically teach their children not to lie. Don't lie. You know, we might even penalize our children if they lie. We don't like lying. Lying is not good. We know it's not good. But we, in our own personal examples, may imply to the children that lying is okay. So if, for example, somebody calls the house who we didn't really want to speak to, we tell the child to tell them, I'm not here. We do this all the time. Tell the kids to tell whoever is called that they're not present. This is an outright lie. We're not thinking about it that way. We just don't want to talk to that person. But we just told the kids, and the child is observing and thinking. Parents are telling him or her to tell the person on the phone a lie. So it's okay to lie. It must be. Mom and dad are doing it. So when we find the child lying, we wonder, where did this lying come from? We say to the child, you know, we didn't raise you to be lying like this, you know, why are you lying? And we're very upset, etc., etc. You know, we have to be very careful because the children observe us carefully and they imitate us in their own behavior. A mother may do something which she doesn't want her husband to know, right? Something which is not acceptable. If husband doesn't want her to do it, he's told her not to do it or whatever. So the mother tells the child, you know, don't tell father. I'm doing so and so, but don't tell father. So she's also teaching that child to lie. So we have to correct ourselves. As parents, we have to be a good example for our children. If we are not good examples, then again, we can't produce children who will be what we're looking for. We'll get everything else but. And it is good for us to supplicate, to call on Allah, saying, "O Allah, guide me to the best of manners, for no one can guide to the best of them except you. And take me away from the worst of manners, for surely none can keep the worst of it away from me except you." So, with Allah's help, if we're conscious of the importance of being good examples, showing them the right way, then we have a chance at raising the children properly. I mean, this gives us an opportunity. But still, this doesn't in and of itself ensure that we raise righteous children. But we can say here we start from a foundation of righteousness. The parents are themselves righteous, they're practicing, and they try to ensure that they provide for their children the best of examples. Try to stay away from any habits which may be misunderstood by the children or which may be taken as a go-ahead for bad behavior. However, as we said, that's not enough. After that, we have to look at how we actually take care of these kids. How do we actually deal with the children on a day-to-day basis? Because that's going to have a big impact on the children. Among the things which Islam prescribes or recommends is breastfeeding for the first 2 years of the child, as long as the woman is capable of doing it, and if she can't, even hiring somebody else to do it is recommended. But the child is raised breastfed. One might say, okay, what's the big deal? You know, some women prefer not to breastfeed or whatever, they feel it will mess up their figure or, you know, whatever. This is not acceptable. It's not somebody who really fears Allah. It's the right of the child to be breastfed. It's mentioned in the Quran for 2 years. The breastfeeding, the importance of breastfeeding is that it develops a bond, a love bond with that child. The child experiences the closeness of the mother, and its love, feelings of love, etc., can develop in a healthy atmosphere. Where the child is denied that, dealing with a bottle, what kind of love can a child get out of a bottle? Well, okay, you get the food and it's good, you're happy to get the food, but the warmth of being, you know, on the mother's chest, on the mother's breast, they're being denied this from the very beginning. Let us not think, or let us not be foolish enough to think that that doesn't have any impact on the child. It will. The personality of the child is created in those early years. So if we don't provide this warmth, which is a natural warmth, we see it in the animal kingdom all around us. You know, most of the animals, they keep the children close by for the first period. Maybe it varies, it's not 2 years, whatever. Human beings, Allah has prescribed 2 years, at least. If one does more, it's fine. So what you're trying to develop here is what is commonly called attachment parenting. The parents have a direct physical, loving relationship with the child. You know, priority is not given to their figures, you know, over the child's needs. This is an important point which can't be stressed enough. I mean, besides the fact of the recommendations of the medical profession, you know, that bottled milk is just no substitute for human milk. The reality is that there is in human milk a number of antibodies and things which help to prepare the child and strengthen it to be able to deal with disease and things like this. There's so much missing in bottled milk that it really can hardly be compared to human milk. I mean, if it is a case where nothing else is available, a need for survival, that's one thing. But where one has a choice, it is evil. It is completely wrong to bottle feed the child when you're capable of breastfeeding the child. So, besides all of what is said from a medical perspective, we're dealing also with psychology. The psychology of that child as it's growing through those early years. The contact, the physical contact with the mother is critical. And scientifically, it has been shown that the first 5 years are the most crucial in forming the future personality. Child's personality is formed in the first 5 years. So you're off to the wrong start if you're bottle feeding. You're already damaging the psychology or psychological makeup of the child. Furthermore, the child is not the focus here. The family, the parents, they're more concerned about themselves than the child in this kind of a scenario. So there's an element of love, real love for the child, which is missing. And sometimes people have children and it's just to go through the ritual of having children, because you're supposed to have children and you're supposed to raise these children. But the real love that comes from attachment parenting, where the mother is closely linked to that child from the time of its birth, if that's missing, then there's a kind of a gap between the mother and the child. And the sense of gentleness and kindness is missing. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said, gentleness is not found in anything except that it beautifies it. And it's not removed from anything except that it defaces it. So breastfeeding a child is part of gentle treatment of that child. And people should not look at it as being, a demanding child. It's crying unnecessarily, you only just fed it. No, the child should be given the breast as long as it wants it. Of course, if it's a case of overeating and, sometimes some kids will drink beyond their capacity and they end up vomiting and these kind of things. This is unusual circumstances. This is not the norm. Normally children will drink to their capacity and then they stop. So whatever warmth and love that we can give them at this stage, it should be given to them. As such, the fourth principle that we're talking about here is that of attachment parenting. It's the right of the child really to be loved. And I don't think anyone would argue or debate that. Well, with that point, we're going to close this session, this part of our series on the 7 habits for raising good Muslim children. And we'll complete the remaining habits, the remaining 3, inshallah, in our coming episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اقرأ أخيا ورتل القرآن اصبح بصوتك اسمع الأكوان اقرأ كلام الله داوي نفوسنا لنحس في أعمال